So here's a lady that I know that the title of MEP will definitely not affect at all. Janice Atkinson.
Good afternoon, Eastbourne. Did you enjoy your lunch, and particularly those of you who came to the MEP lunch? Good, good. Wow, are we still feeling the aftershocks of our earthquake? I am. I was quite shocked on election night. I thought we'd get 5, we only got 4. But anyway, that's a failure, and we can do better next time if that's all right. You see, I'm a hard taskmaster. One thing I didn't do on election night was do so many thank yous as I should have done. I thanked the electorate and thanked the returning officer, because actually I didn't expect to speak. I thought it would just be Nigel, and Nigel thought it would just be him to speak as well. So before I go into the main theme of my speech, I'd like to say thank you to my UKIP family, because we come under such sustained attack. And the more you come under attack, the more you come together as a cohesive group, and that's what we did. And I have never known such fantastic support from the young independents up to the pensioners. And I can't tell you how grateful I was for that, and my own family. So thank you, my UKIP family. And actually I'd like to pay tribute to one man, Nigel Farage, because actually, you know, this man, you know, has led our party. He created the debate. We were leading the debate. The others were following. And when you look at the party leaders from the Lib Lab Con, they're like pygmies. They become more like pygmies with every passing day. And Nigel towers above them. And are we going to cause an earthquake in 2015? Oh, absolutely. But my speech to you this afternoon, and particularly the media, actually, and our enemies out there, and I don't include all the media in that. I'm going to talk about homophobia, sexism, and particularly racism, which is particularly pernicious. Let's take homophobia. Why, if we're such a homophobic party, have we got our first Scottish gay MEP? And if we're so homophobic, why have we got such a thriving LGBT party? LGBT party, which I fully support, and they come out and campaign with me. So let's knock that homophobic on the head. And as Nigel touched upon in his speech, if we're so sexist and misogynistic party, why have we now got 7 women MEPs? Why did I top the national ballot? I came 4th behind Nigel, Paul Nuttall and Gerard Batten. I came 4th, and the other women were hot on my heels. I was number 2 in the South East. You voted me for number 2. And the only person that stopped me being the number 1 was Nigel Farage. So, you know, the females are there. If you think Nigel's caused a bit of an earthquake in Brussels, you wait till those females turn up. I tell you, they don't know what's here. And we had women topping the region in Yorkshire and West Midlands. And we came 2nd on the ballot. So let's knock that sexism on the head as well. But also, we got there by 1 person, 1 vote, as Nigel said earlier. No women or women shortlist for us, no gender quotas, and I thank you for that. We should be proud of that too. But I particularly want to tackle racism. As a teenager, I went on Rock Against Racism, and I was part of the Anti-Nazi League. That's what I did. My views have never changed, and I challenged them. And this has been the dirtiest, nasty election that we've known, because they've used racism and they've thrown the racism card at us. And in some ways, racism is the nastiest of all the isms. If you're against uncontrolled immigration, then that's racist, but we all know it isn't. And now Labour are admitting that they got immigration wrong, but nobody's calling the racist card for them. And I'll go on to that in a minute. Now, I took Hope Not Hate and United Against Fascism on, and I took them on the same time as Nigel. Actually, we didn't discuss it. And I can tell you, my Twitter account just came under attack, and those that you follow me on Twitter will know that some of the hateful things that were said against me. You know, there was one that I was going to repeat about an abortion, but I'm not going to repeat that because it's so disgusting. I've had death threats, I've been called a Nazi slut, but I took them on. It was really, really nasty. But you know, those people, they're funded by the unions. And every one of you in this audience, and I've been a trade union member, do they realise where their money's going? Do they realise that the hate that has been spouted against us and all the anti-messages that went out in Newark, like we're going to scrap maternity pay and privatise the NHS, all that was GMB and Unite funded. And we've got to take that message out there. We've got to tell them they're wrong. We've got to appeal to the ordinary trade unions. Do you realise that your money is actually being used as a racism campaign against us? And I think, you know, if you're a trade union member, you'd be absolutely disgusted with that. There is method in what they do, because actually they targeted us because those groups were paid to do it. They were paid by the Department of Communities and Local Government. They received tens of thousands of pounds and they used that money against us. They were funded by the unions and they were funded by Labour. And yet, what do you do when you form a pressure group and you've got funding? You actually campaign against people, and their campaign was targeted against us. I mean, some of you may have seen me across Twitter and in the newspapers where I raised my middle finger in Ashford a few weeks ago. I'm not proud of that, but I was pushed to the limits of my endurance. We've had a nasty, horrible, sustained attack against us. And I was standing with some lovely, distinguished elderly gentlemen and our ladies and our youth wing in Ashford a few weeks ago on a nice sunny day. And 5 rabble turned up against us. And they had racist bigots, and I was called a Nazi slut. And they're standing there dancing in the sunshine because there was a sort of born-again religious group that was playing music. And they thought it was okay to stand there with their placards and say this. So we did a bit of research against them, and they were Greens. The Socialist Workers' Party wing of the Greens. Now, they're standing for election. If they'd have knocked on the doors of the electorate, rather than hassling my people and calling us racist bigots and Nazi sluts, if they'd knocked on the doors and they told the people, one was an eco-socialist, whatever that is, one was a self-proclaimed witch that was into exorcism, they couldn't make it up, she was, absolutely, and one was an anarchist. Now, it's true. Our youth wing quickly, and Twitter's a wonderful thing, they quickly went online, they said, Janice, these are the people that are up against you. But they think they're legitimate to stand there in the street and campaign against lovely Norman sitting down there and me, and I just lost my rag. So I apologise that if I brought the party slightly into disrepute, but you know, it was the end of a long and bitter and nasty campaign, and because of all the reasons that I've said to you about, you know, my background, again, you know, going on Rock Against Racism and being part of the Anti-Nazi League, I particularly saw red that day. It's not from I see red. To ask why these people have such loud voices is because they are actually professionally funded. Successive governments have created something called the hate industry. So you've got the human rights industry, the racism industry, and the equality rights industry. If they were abolished, saving millions of taxpayers' funds, and lawyers and barristers would be out of work, saving on lawyers' fees, and then scapegoating people, our country would be a much more harmonious place. But don't take it from me, I'm going to introduce you to 2 people now that helped me in my campaign in Kent. They felt so inspired, they were so angry against the racism slurs. And they're going to touch on some of these issues I've talked about. So we're going to hear first from Ben from the Medway Towns, and we've got a short video because Ben can't be with us today.
You're 20 years old, you're British, you're a student union. Yeah. you see your political options as a young man?
Oh wow. I think the only political options I think are worth considering is Respect Party, Green Party, and UKIP. I think they're the only political options.
Which party do you support in the European elections?
That's what UKIP.
What was your primary reason for doing that?
Well, I think I don't know whether it's down to bravery or stupidity, but whatever it is, they seem to be the only ones who are really committed to and will be able to deliver either a referendum or a straight out Europe, which I think is really we're dying in. So.
What's your main reasons for wanting out of Europe?
Well, I've heard there's statistics that say I think it's 55 million we send to Europe a day, and in my life, I've never really received anything directly from the European Union. So I think we're paying a lot of bureaucracy, and I don't think it's paying off. If they were doing something for a particular country that we live in outside of London, it'd be great, but I don't think, I can't see anything.
That's a fairly controversial position to take as a student, is it not?
I think you'd be surprised. A lot of students actually are very my class anyway, are quite not very politically motivated, but they've got strong opinions about stuff. It's just they feel like they can't do anything. Because I mean, we all got rallied up behind Nick Clegg, and then they lied to us. So after a lot of the students, like that's what they put all their hearts into the Liberal Democrat movement, and then because they turned out to be just the same as the rest of them, that was heartbreaking for the students. So I think that's why a lot of students, even though they've got beliefs, they don't really trust anybody, so there's no point getting involved.
UKIP's taken a hammering over the last few weeks, particularly about being a racist party. What's your perception on that?
I don't know, I think when you're comparing, I think people have to be very careful when you use the phrase racist party. It's not like it's BNP or the National Front. Those were properly racist parties. I don't think you can define UKIP as a racist party. I mean, does that mean it's always members are racist? I mean, it can't really control the ideology of the members, and that's like anybody really. But I think if I was to make a case, or if I was to make a case against UKIP as a racist, to convict them as a racist party, I think I'd have a very hard time doing so, because none of their policy have anything to do with race. It just seems to be immigration, but it seems like immigration is the buzzword for race nowadays, which is
UKIP's now released its manifesto. Will you continue to track UKIP as we move towards the general election?
Yeah, I actually read the manifesto yesterday, and there's a lot. I don't know, I expected it to be a lot wilder than it was. I really did expect it to be a bit more. I don't know, they just have this. Because it's a new party, it has it's not that it's necessarily unprofessional, but it's not as institutionalised as the party, so you think it's going to be, make some grow manifesto in there in a pub, but it's actually really well written, it's very informative, very short, and there's key points on there which I really, really liked, and they sound great. If they can pull it off, which I hope they do, then I think it'll be great.
What would your message be to your Andrew, your fellow students?
I don't know, right? With us, I think we just really need to, as people who are in power now, they kind of need to know that we're here, and yes, we do care about the country. No, they can't continue to lie. If I got to power back on the first things, then we wouldn't need any other parties, would you? Because Labour would be alright, wouldn't they? And Conservatives would be alright, because they promised something, they have to do it. So, like, I think, yeah, if really, to my generation, I'm saying we should just get involved in politics. Either we need to start a political party, we need to join a political party, we need to leave the country if we're not voting, or we need to start a revolution. There are options.
Thank you.
I'm so pleased that he's decided to support us, because it wasn't just a shoe-in. I was interviewed whether he was going to come over to UKIP or not. It was a real hard taskmaster. But I'm hoping that Ben if he'll have us, will be a youth ambassador for us, and particularly in Kent, because he's at university there, and I think that would be really great. Next we're going to hear from my friend Sat from Rochester in Kent, and he's going to tell you his tale.
Thank you very much, Janice. Hi, my name is Satpal Singh. I'm a British Sikh from Rochester in Kent. Before anything, I'd just like to announce, I'm very pleased to announce that I'm actually about to be a father very soon. Thank you. I more or less left school and college with, I'd say, a fairly basic education. Worked in a few jobs, B&Q, and a few giant companies, and then eventually started my own business in the washroom and hygiene sector. We supply hand dryers and all sorts of workplace equipment. Now, I would say in the last 5 years, it's got so difficult to compete. And I would say I've noticed that these giant companies are more or less somehow buying all these smaller companies, sometimes still trading as they are, but behind the scenes, sort of interchanging staff, getting rid of staff, saving money somehow. But it's not giving people like us a chance. It's by far the most difficult year I've seen in the last, well, this last year, to be honest with you. I just feel this corporatism and globalisation, where will it end? I'd like to tell you how I actually got here today. If even 5 weeks ago anybody told me that I'd be doing a speech in front of the most racist party in politics, but you know what? It's thanks to somebody who more or less pestered me 2 years ago. He kept saying, "You've got to come to this UKIP meeting, you've got to come to this UKIP meeting." And I thought, at the time, what am I going to do at a UKIP meeting? And in the end, more or less 4 or 5 months ago, I went to Maidstone High Street, where he took me. I met up with Janice Atkinson and some other council candidates, and it really, something I felt that day, because I saw people coming up to us, even though I was just standing there with them. They had concerns, they were worried about their communities, what's going to happen down the road from us, worried about their jobs. And you know what, that's where I felt it's happening everywhere. They mentioned getting an appointment with the doctor's surgery. Now I can relate to that, it's exactly the same. I've known some receptionists for years and years, and those same receptionists have turned me down so many times, and I think it's strange, they don't want to do it, but they're having to do it. Things are stretched. The primary schools I went to, which more or less gave me my British way of life, are now unable to cope. So where does that leave my children and my child that very soon will enter this world? As I said, I am very worried about my country, very, very worried about my British way of life. Unemployment is another big issue, and it just worries me to where am I going to be sending my children, and some of the very, very difficult decisions that I'm going to be making. And let's tackle racism. Now, I remember being at school, and you know, I'd have all the basic name calling, they'd call me Packy, I'd call him Whitey. And with some of these playground banters, some of them ended up some of my best friends. But I can understand where political correctness is coming from. It's a good idea, it's a good theory they come up with. But where will that end? I remember, I just want to take you back to the London rally of hate racism that John took me to, a friend of mine. And then we were queuing up. Some of you may remember this. And all I can remember is people shouting, UKIP is a racist party. And I looked at some of these people in the eye. And I thought, they didn't mean it. It's like they're throwing something at us that isn't true. I saw through it. And I know many, many other Sikhs, Muslims, people of colour will see through it eventually. Because the truth really always wins in the end. I'm very proud to be part of UKIP. I'm very proud of my party, I'm very proud of Nigel Farage. Very proud that we're actually exposing the truth, we're sticking up for the truth. And we're going to make such beautiful changes and really bring our sovereignty back. And just to end it, just like many of you here, I think it's time to bring our country back.
They're great, aren't they? But there's loads more of those. People like them in the Medway towns, as we discovered when we were there in Chatham and Gillingham that morning. Yeah, more classes, all backgrounds, all demographics and all colours voted for us. And when you're going to see a bit of a heat map later on about where we got our maximum votes from, and it was the areas in Kent where actually we've had high immigration over decades. You know, the Sikhs that came here to work, the Afro-Caribbeans, and they voted for us. And that's a really inconvenient truth to the other parties. But onwards, colleagues. There's no time to rest. You have your fun today because we're going to get this People's Army on the march to 2015, and I want a seat in Kent and be an MP because I don't want to be an MEP. Okay?